Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kalumba Bwale, and you're online here with me. And we're doing this first of 3 series in the Ultimate in Month-End Reporting webinar for Studio Survey. Online with me is Haja Rahabat, dialing in from Morocco, a mining engineer. I myself, am a surveyor. I've been surveying for the last 17 years, and my last job before I joined DataMine was chief surveyor for Lubambe Copper Mine. And I hope you're going to have fun today, because I'm going to help at least the surveyors that are dialing in sleep a bit more because of the headaches we're going to get rid of with the end of month measure. So in this webinar, we're going to look at a couple of things that DataMine Studio Survey can take care of for you. To begin with, we're going to look at the various data sources that feed into Studio Survey. And then we're going to take a quick peek at the operational integration that Studio Survey is going to enable between the various departments. We're also going to take an examination of how the file structure is organized. And then we'll dig deep in and spend quite a bit of time looking at the month-end reporting tools, because this is essentially where Studio Survey has been designed to make your life easier as a surveyor for your operation. And then finally, we'll open up the software and take a quick look at some of the tools. With regards to the software, we split this webinar up into 3 sessions so that we can have this overview today, a brief look at the user interface, and then next week, Thursday, we will have an in-depth look at the software. So if you have a question, you can just type it in the chat. There should be a chat window open available to you. Just type your question in there and we will get to it. At the bottom, you can basically communicate with us what you want to hear, what you want to find out. Or if you just have a comment that you want to make, just please go ahead, put it in the questions. And then towards the end, we will address the questions that have been typed out first. And then if you have something that just comes up, we'll unmute the mic for you and then you can ask your questions. So let's get into this. Thank you. So first and foremost, before we go, I can see that there's quite a number of surveyors online that have met at underground mines, or I know for sure that you are working at underground mines. So the survey products that DataMine has is Studio Survey, which is primarily designed for surface and open pit applications. And then for those of you that are underground, we have Amine, which is designed to take care of your stoping operations, your development measure reporting, as well as anything else that you might be aware of. So behind these products, there's a simple philosophy that drives them, which is essentially make mine survey simple. And to basically get to that drive, we ask ourselves 4 questions. What are the most annoying processes in a surveyor's life? And when you look at these processes, you find that there are things like editing strings, doing the month-end measure, updating the maps and plans that you have to deal with on a daily basis. And then we ask ourselves also, what are the mistakes that will cost your job or your company money? Now, for a surveyor that's in charge of the measurements, and when I was the chief surveyor, this is one of the things that would basically keep me up at night. It becomes very, very easy to overpay a contractor if you've made a transpositional error. So you need to be able to consistently catch mistakes, consistently issue information that is accurate, precise, and repeatable, something that can be easily audited, which is one of the aspects that Studio Survey takes care of. It creates an audit trail of all your data sets, and we'll get into that as we discuss the end of month reporting. The other question that would drive this is what can be done easy.
Kalumba? We cannot hear you. Can you unmute yourself? Nothing.
Kalumba?
Can't hear anything, I'm afraid. Can anyone phone Columba? Tell him that we can't hear.
Yes,
Yes.
we'll do so shortly.
Apparently we had an issue with the sound, so let's just carry on. I'm going to ask Ambrose, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're going on from here. The three aspects that makes Studio Survey a brilliant tool to work with is the file management system, which the software develops and manages for you. Now, you create this file management system when you set it up initially, and you don't really have to do this again unless you're adding certain things, certain features to it. And then the dedicated reporting workflows, which we'll actually get into in detail. And then one of the things that's common across the Studio products is the easy and quick DTM manipulation that we do have. So to begin with, the various sources that we get data from. So on the right-hand side, you're going to notice that there's tools that are becoming more and more common in the open pit mining space. I've basically set these up beginning at the bottom with total stations, which are slowly dying out, but still in use. And then we've got the GPS, we've got laser scanners, and now we've got drones, which are equipped with either a LiDAR sensor or a camera, which can be used in photogrammetry. So Studio Survey is equipped with extremely powerful drivers that will read information from any of these data sources. With regards to the photogrammetry, we need an additional step. That is probably what you'll do if you fly a Phantom 4 or Mavic Pro over your pit. You're going to have Pix Pro as an option with the package to make it easier to do your photo stitching and generation of your point clouds or LAS files. And then we also have the ability, at least at present, when you plug in your Leica GPS or your Leica Total Station, to plug in and you will be able to upload those data sets straight into the software. So just before we get into Studio Survey proper, I just want to mention that we do have the ability to take care of an entire operation within the DataMine Suite. So we begin with Studio EM, which the exploration geologists will use, and they'll basically take care of the exploration mapping and ore body modeling before you get to your production. And then we've got Studio RM, which will be used on a day-to-day basis, updating block models and all those lovely stuff that the geologists tend to do. And then we've got mining engineers that will use Studio OP to make a design. Now, this is where on a day-to-day basis, we're going to interface on a regular basis. And Haja will speak briefly later on about how we can use the datasets created from Studio OP to feed into Studio Survey. And then Studio Survey, then you can use those topos to put into Data Blast or Controller in order to optimize your operation and essentially cut down your operating costs. So when you look at running an entire mine system, Studio Survey and Studio OP make the perfect pair. It's like bread and butter together. They're not very nice by themselves, but when you put them together, they make very, very good combinations that will optimize your operation. So like I said earlier, today we're focusing on Studio Survey. So Studio Survey comes with the managed database, which we'll look at, and it emphasizes automation and, like we've just said, integration across the platforms that we have. Now, this is the database schematic that we have in Studio Survey. When you run your database initialization, Studio Survey will go ahead and create a database that will have folders that organize your pits, which you can have in any number. It will organize your run of mine stockpiles, waste dumps, tailings dams, essentially the hole in the ground and the material that you've scooped on surface, you've heaped on surface. So all of these can be managed. And in the webinar coming after this one, we'll look at setting up a database and organizing your pits. And then the one after that, we'll look at setting up your stockpiles and reporting them. And then you're also going to have a publications folder where all your reports, mind you, these are automated. All your reports are exported to and stored. And then you've got the survey import module that takes care of all your survey datasets that you've imported from a GPS or a total station. And then you've got your settings folder. The settings folder will contain your Excel templates, which you can customize and edit to suit your operation. You might want your datasets to be presented in a very specific format. And you can basically adjust the template to suit that. What you export from Studio Survey will then go in there. And then finally, we've got a folder where each surveyor on your team will have their individual folder. A lot of operations tend to have legal requirements, which, for example, the government wants to know which surveyor did a certain job, and all of this information is immediately available in the survey folder. So with regards to the GUI and the dialog boxes that we have, adding the data to the database is as simple as clicking that, and you select the type of info that you're putting in. Now, let me just do this from top down. So at the very top, you've got your pit, and then you've got your pit area. And then you're going to select the surveyor as well as the date on which you created this data set. And then you select the type of surface or the type of data, whether it's a ROM-based surface, your open pit surface, your design surface, as well as the scope. We'll talk about the scope at a later time, because this is one of the aspects that you get into when we discuss these things in detail. And then you also have the file that is being used to create this data set. And then this is the file structure, the folder structure that we talked about a moment ago. This is what it will practically look like on your system. So for the next few minutes, we're going to look at the reporting structures, and this is the reporting tab that we are discussing. The Studio Survey does indeed come with a lot of other tools, but the focus of this series of webinars is the month-end reporting tab that has been built specifically to take care of business on your end. So we've got the pit actual, the ROM, the design compliance, and the plan compliance. And then we've got a dedicated blast volume calculator. Then we've got the publishing tool. So the publishing tool essentially just runs the reports that you've created from each of these. So over the next 10 minutes, we'll go through each one of these individually. First and foremost, we've got the pit actual, and this will be the most common report that every single pit does. So this is for those of you that are not surveyors, essentially the comparison between the previous digital terrain model and the current digital terrain model in order to establish the volume that has been mined. So this entire process is semi-automated. The inputs that are required is the natural topography. Now, the natural topography is the surface of the ground before you actually do any mining. Or if you're taking over an old project, maybe say an abandoned pit, whatever that pit surface was, that is what you would definitely use as your natural topo. Because as part of the reporting, the Studio Survey will generate your total progressive mining from the beginning of the operation. And then you have your current surveyed surface, as well as the previous. These are the two surfaces that you're comparing, and the volume between the two is what will be used. Now, if you look at this list, you've got the bench definitions that we have, as well as the pit excavation boundaries. These two data sets, you only enter them when you're defining your database, which we'll get to later on. But you need to appreciate that this will enable you to maybe split your pit into reporting areas. An example of why you would want to do this, let's say you have two contractors working in your pit. You've got two mining areas, two different contractors, and you need to generate a report for each one. So you create a boundary around the mining area for one contractor. You can even put the contractor's name on that string, as well as putting in a boundary around the other. And then the bench definitions will essentially be your vertical definition on the description of your pit so that your volumes are reported by bench. The outputs that you will get out of this, in case you're wondering why so many, especially with regards to surfaces, you're going to have PDF plots of the cuts and fills, and then an Excel spreadsheet generated of the mined volumes as per the bench definitions. Now, these are defined, first of all, in terms of how much has been mined from the time the pit started and how much has been mined for the month. So the software is going to perform 3 DTM cut and fill operations between the natural topo and the current surface, the natural topo and the previous surface, and then the current surface against the previous surface. So in view of that, you then have yourself a series of volumes that will give you a check. And then you're also going to have as an output the solids of the mined volumes that you will then be able to post to the database. Well, the software actually posts these values to the database for you. And what this does create is an audit trail of what datasets you have created. So a quick look at what these outputs look like. On your left, you have a report. Now, the pit boundary serves the purpose of naming the area that you are mining. And when you've got, say, a contractor A, let's say you've given DataMine to mine the northern portion of your pit. So if you had put a boundary around the northern portion of your pit here, what you will then have is a situation where DataMine has been mining here, and you've given a contractor, Benny Chisonga, to mine the southern end. I know at least I can make fun of Benny. I know he's online and listening. So this name here will report the figures only for what DataMine has done. And then this here, the report will only say what Benny Chisonga has done. So you split those, the software will split those for you and give you also your total progressive volumes. What was mined from start of mine to the previous surface, what was mined from the start of mine to the current surface, and the net volume. So the net volume in these comparisons will give you essentially what has been mined for the month. And then the two concurrent volumetric analyses will then give you a check against each other. because it's been said surveyor is spelled C-H-E-C-K. Surveyors always check their stuff. So in the current iteration, if you feel the 6 or 7 minutes that it takes for all of these processes to take place is too long, you do have the option in the current iteration of Studio Survey to eliminate the need to use the natural pit surface, so that the only calculation that is done is between the previous and the current, and you have yourself a net mined volume. But what that does is it leaves you without a means of checking your work, without a means of knowing that something has gone wrong in maybe the compilation of the strings that you use to create a DTM. So it's always nice to have a check, and it's also good to just know off the top of your head how much has been mined from the start of your project. The next tool that is one of my personal favorites is the Stockpile Reporting tool. I remember the last stockpile that I measured was just over 100,000 cubes, and my firstborn son was being born at the time, and I was busy picking up that stockpile surface. It was uncomfortable. But anyway, we have as inputs the stockpile base file. At most operations that I've been to, even where I've worked myself, the base is generally neglected. A lot of the operating officials do not realize that a surveyor needs to pick up the flat surface or the natural topography before they start heaping the stuff there, and just go ahead and start putting the material on an unmeasured base, and this produces an inaccuracy in the data sets. So for those of you mining engineering and production officials that are heaping stockpiles anyhow, please involve your surveyors in the pickup initially of the bases before you begin your stockpiles. That will guarantee that your volume estimates are as accurate as humanly possible. So the way surveyors will get around that, generally speaking, is to use the toes of these stockpiles to create these base surfaces. And then the next data set that is fed in there are the obvious stockpile surfaces. Now these are, you'd call them either caps or mats, or tops and bottoms, and then the boundaries. So in the boundary strings, which we'll discuss in the third webinar, you can then add the names of the individual stockpiles, and your outputs will be your PDF plots of all the stockpiles with the names plotted, as well as the volumes, an Excel spreadsheet, as well as solids of the stockpiles that you have created that will leave you an audit trail. So this is what the report will look like. Now, before I continue, I must mention that all of this is publishable in a single sheet. And you can see here that the stockpiles that you've got and the respective volumes are also presented here. You do not need to handle any of this data manually. You do not need to copy and paste. The software will take care of this for you. The moment you're done with your report creation, the software will generate these solids and post them to a database for your use. So the next tool is the design compliance. So with regards to design compliance, I'm sure you've heard of instances and reports where you've had massive slips in the open pits, where a wall was it collapsed or fell simply because the wrong repo's angle was mined, or someone mined outside of design, creating a hazardous situation. The reason this tool is important is you can have a pit that is mined very beautifully, something that's absolutely lovely to look at, but it doesn't conform to the design parameters that have been set out by the mining engineers. So you enter the pit design and then your surveyed pit surfaces or your as-builts, and then a boundary string around the area that you intend to analyze. So what this is it gives you a very accurate spatial analysis of the data set. You can be looking at a beautiful pit that has very clean roads, nicely done, that doesn't conform to the design parameters. And that becomes a very dangerous scenario. You won't see it by sight, but you will see it by the analysis that's done in this tool. And then coming out of this are the PDF plots, which show you the conforming and the non-conforming areas, an Excel spreadsheet of the overmined and undermined areas, and then the solids that show the non-conformance. And all of this can be kept, all of this is also posted into the database and kept for records. So you then have yourself a nice PDF plot that is automatically generated by the software. You also have the same volumes of overbreak and underbreak, or overmine and undermine, reported by bench based on the files that the bench file that you created. So at this moment, I'll just give Haja a few minutes to speak about how you can go about creating the mine design. Haja? Wow, I think we've lost connection there. Okay, so we do have in the suite Studio
Sorry,
OP.
sorry, Kalumba. I was talking, but I was muted. Shame. So hello,
All right.
everyone. So as Kalumba said, it's very important to know the connection between Studio OP and the MP and the Studio Survey. So one very important point that we need to know, the difference between what is already mined and what was designed. So we know the underbreak and the undermine and overmine. So we get this information back from the survey to OP, so we can, for example, edit the design. Sometimes it's a minor problem that can be fixed, but sometimes if, for example, a pre-split is done wrong, this is a problem on your footwall. So you bring it back to OP, you see what's the damage that this wrong measurement or wrong mining happened to your design, and you can see how much ore did you lose, for example. And the same thing as other thing that we can bring from the surveyor is the updated surfaces. So we can take that topography and we can update our mining blocks. So we can adjust also the design and also the scheduling. So this
Okay.
is, yeah.
Thanks, Haja. So the next one, when you compare the two, Haja just mentioned scheduled surfaces. We have compliance to plan. Now the plan differs from design in that the plan is talking about when you intend to achieve a certain amount of mining by. So it's essentially coming from the schedule that has been created by the mining engineers, also from a scheduling package. And these would be essentially designs that have been broken down into the portions of mining that you intend to take care of, that you intend to achieve, say, within the month. So you'd have to get yourself from Studio OP or whatever design package that you've got, the scheduled surfaces, and then you get your as-built survey and run the comparative analysis between the two surfaces. Again, you will need a boundary that is going to constrain your analysis to the area of interest. As an output, you get yourself a plot of behind or ahead of schedule solids, an Excel spreadsheet, and the solid mined to schedule or ahead. So this is what that output looks like. And you can immediately see the portions that have been mined ahead and the portions that are behind within the software. And the software does this automatically as well, without you having to copy and paste from an Excel sheet, paste, none of that. So Studio Survey takes care of that, and you essentially have more sleep when you get home. Yeah. The other tool that we do have, which interfaces quite nicely with Studio OP is the blast volume calculator. So one of the inputs into this is the blast outline and the topography of the drilled surface, or you can have a blast pattern design loaded here as well. And then you will need a bottom surface. So I believe there's a tool in Studio OP Haja where you can do
Yes.
your, yeah. So, yep.
So in Studio OP, we have the blast layout tools that provides a set of features to design your blast blocks and create a drill plan subsequently, and then send it to the surveyors. So in Studio OP, we do just design and the design of your blast, so you can send it to the surveyors. But we have a full package that can do your drilling blast, right, Kalumba? That is Data
Yep.
Blast. So even in Data Blast, you can send the designs from Data Blast to survey, and it can do the same job, but with more details.
So in this case, from the surveyor's perspective, what you're going to have is essentially a built-up database of your calculated blast volumes before you take the blast. So in situations where you want to know the volume before the blast is taken, or for every blast that you're about to do, these are the data sets you'll pick up. You'll pick up the extremities of the blast colors, and then you're going to have the design of the extent that you intend to blast to. And this volume can then be used to calculate things like your powder factors and so on. So at this point, I can open up for questions. If anybody raise their hands, we can check out questions or we can take a tour of the GUI. Unmute users. Where are we? Does anyone have a question?
So Kalumba, we can see the written questions. So we have some question from Wither Alfredo saying, can clients modify or customize table and columns to capture data?
Can clients?
Can client modify or customize tables and columns to capture data?
I think
it's
I would
not
need
for
some
capture.
context too. I don't think I understand the question.
Hi, hello.
Yes.
The question is, at the beginning of the process, you talk the software is a database, okay? So the question is that database or engine database has any kind of a schema or library to modify some columns on some picklets for the user? You know, every company has his own properties and description and features. So perhaps one company needs to modify some columns and some metadata features. That is the question.
Oh, okay. So the database that Studio Survey comes packaged with is actually essentially a file structure. And since we're about to open the software, I can show you how that is. So it's not like an SQL database that depends on tables. It's essentially folders that the data sets are stored in.
Okay.
Yes. Is there any other question?
Yes. So we have from Joaquin Lehner, how you identify the bench's elevation to make a bench-based report.
Excellent. So we'll do that in the next webinar on Thursday. So there's, as part of the user interface of Studio Survey, let me just open the software, seeing as we are about to take a look at just Okay, so where that is, when you open up, when you're setting up your database, you have, when you're setting up your pits, this is where you'd have to go and essentially establish the various parameters that affect your, the various bench definitions. So if we were to have another, let's say a definition that will take care of all the pits, we'll have ourselves the crest elevation, maybe 15, 12, a bench height, maybe 6 or 12 meters, and then you go add. Do you wish to overwrite it? But no, I don't wish to overwrite it. I just wanted to show you that this is where the magic happens. Okay, does that take care of your question? Okay.
So we have another question from Julio. When you say volume, is included the tons, or you have to do the calculation later?
Generally speaking, we can't put in tonnages because each mine site has their own specific gravity or bulk density that they work with. So like in my region, where I am right now, that is around 2.57. Further south, the rock is a lot less denser and it drops to maybe 2.4. So this varies from area to area, but because the report is an Excel spreadsheet template that is created, you can simply put in your bulk density factor and have the export as a tonnage. And also that will be determined a lot by how you calculate your bulk densities. Now, these bulk densities also vary by fragmentation. If you've got huger chunks of rock versus fine powder, you find that one of those is denser than the other because of, say, the absence of gaps in between the different fragments of rock that have been blasted. I think I saw a hand up. Okay, so very
Yes, for
quickly.
John Beshi.
Ah, yes.
Can you see it?
Okay, let's unmute John. Give mute John.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, sir.
Thank you. I'm assuming at the end of the day, you'll be able to generate a wireframe which you can then interface with the source model to establish what has been extracted from the resource. Is that
I couldn't get you clearly.
I'm saying after everything has been done, you should definitely be able to generate a wireframe, of the mapped out area, which then you can estimate how much has been extracted from the resource model.
Yes.
Okay.
But then that's not a process that you're going to do within Studio. Dr. Benny, are you online? Let's just have maybe someone that Studio RM provide a response to that.
No, Dr. Benny is not with us.
He's not online. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that kind of.
Okay.
Yes,
sorry,
John?
go ahead. You can go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted the geologist to give you the answer to that because I'm more on the survey side, and when we generate a data set, we'll generally hand it back over to the mining engineers once we've done the analysis, or the geologists will do further analysis in terms of what the depletion is or what's been done. So we're going to take Isaac's question and then Mohammed, and then from there we'll take a few looks at the software. Is that okay?
Thank you. That's fine.
Thank you, John. So Isaac, the floor is yours. Isaac? Okay, Isaac had his hand up and
Okay, for Isaac, he already written the question. So he says,
okay.
with reference to design and plan compliance, I would suggest we have a legend on the output plot, that is PDF, for the overmined and undermined.
Oh yes, that is very easily added to the plot template. Again, different people want to see different things on their outputs. So when you do get the software, it becomes very easy to customize the templates that you have received with it to suit your operation. So we don't ship it with everything that each individual client requires. But what we do then is provide you with a basic template that you then build up with your individual specific site requirements. So this varies from client to client, what they want to see out of the software, out of the outputs. So the last question we're going to get from Mohammed Samad. Mohammed, I'm unable to. Yes, finally.
Hello everybody.
Hi, Mohammed. How are you?
Fine, and you?
Excellent.
I'm glad to see your software. It's very helpful for everybody.
Thank you very much.
So I want to know how can I download this software, and either I have to purchase or I can do it download with free of cost.
Okay, so I'm going to put my email address on the chat,
Okay.
and then you can get in touch with me or Haja,
Okay.
or basically the website as well, and we can continue
Okay.
that conversation after.
Okay, sir. No problem. Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
So for anyone else that's actually interested, I've just posted my email address onto the chat platform, and you will be able to get in touch with me on that. Okay. So a quick overview of the user interface, which we'll spend the next 10 minutes doing, and then I will be out of time. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Is what we have here is the user interface of Studio Survey. And it's arranged like writing the English language, with your workflow set from left to right, essentially up to that point there. These two buttons are for your initialization for your initialization of your database and for adding data sets to the database. So you'd start by importing your survey data from your instrument. Okay, sorry, I didn't realize it was opening up on my screen. So from here, you can process a job, import it, search for your download data set wherever you've plugged your total station to dump that info. And then once you've got your data loaded, you then make use of the snapping tools to set up your snaps, your editing tools to create strings, edit them, build your digital terrain models. So I do have, I believe, in my data set, I should have some ROMs that were surveyed. Yep. So this is an extremely dirty survey that was done deliberately so that you can have a practical example to look at. This is the exact same data set that we will be looking at in the third seminar, because the third webinar, this webinar seminar. Okay. So we have string editing tools that will enable us to edit these data sets. So in this case, this surveyor was going around with a GPS and picking up these strings. Now, like in this case, this person forgot to close that off. In this case, they forgot to maybe change the code that they were surveying with, and when they're importing it, this came through connected to that. So you can very, very easily use the tools there to break that string at the points that you've determined are not suitable for the rest of this survey. Break string. Am I too far? So if that's happening, it's nice to switch on your snaps or snap with your left mouse button, your right mouse button. Huh. This is interesting. So we do have a series of CAD tools that are there in terms of creation of data sets like strings and so on. Haja, do you have Studio open?
Yes. So do you want to switch on to my?
Yes.
Okay.
So from the left to the right, we have string editing tools, string creation, and then you can insert lines, delete lines, and so on. We're switching
Okay.
over screens to Haja.
Okay.
A moment.
That's fine. Can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
That's okay. Just a sec. Let me see. Okay. So if you can see my screen,
Not yet.
so the edit tool. Can anyone see if you can see my screen?
Yes.
So
Yes,
they can see it. Okay. So basically the string manipulation is just new string. So you click and you write your screen. So close, so CL auto close your string or close it from here. You can see it on a different, on a 3D. So like this. So you can break strings, break here, and break here. So you have to delete and delete the segments. You can also translate up and down your strings, and you can keep origins while doing that. So you can translate, break, move your strings. So for example, delete a point. The dynamic tool of creating your strings is that you can easily modify them. So you can run MPO, move points, or move points from here. So the shortcut is MPO, and then you can drag it. You can delete points either by DPO or delete point from here. So you can insert point anywhere you want to, and then, for example, so basically it's very dynamic, and the string manipulation in Studio Survey is the same in the string manipulation in Studio RM and all the Studio cores. So it makes it easily to integrate your strings, to understand how it's easy to manipulate strings. So you can create another string somewhere. You can see on the plan view, the north view, east, south. So it's a plan view basically. And you can have multiple strings, files. So you can write CNS. So create a new string, and then a new string is NS, or here just new string. And then I can have another string here. But basically there are different files. So for example, we can run the rapid digitalizer. So you can write RAP. So RAP is switch on. Okay, let me do it on RAP. Then for example, I want to create a string from here. So this is my string, and I want to create a new string exactly in this point, so I can snap on them. So one, I snap on my point, so I have exactly the same string. So I can even put CLO. So you can see that different strings are here. If I want to edit, insert points, and I can enter new point, sorry, insert point, not.
Also, insert line is quite
So,
useful when you're updating a survey from a previous phase to a new phase.
So let me delete this one. So now, for example, this is my plan view. Then insert line, that is here, insert line. You can insert line from here to here. So you are updating your face, or you can, for example, Control Z. Let me delete this one. Okay, ILS or insert line. So I want to create a line like this. So you see, it's quite useful. And also rapid digitalizer that you can easily run through a string that have too many points, and then you just replicate it and create another string. Do you wish to show something else?
Well, essentially, it's just the layout in terms of, this is actually the home tab, which we're looking at now, which collects various aspects of the various tabs behind it. Other than the home tab, we've got the data tab. Just go click the data tab.
Okay.
So under the data tab,
You can Yeah,
You can import.
you can go, Kalumba.
Yep. So under the data tab, you can import data sets from other software applications, from other from other DataMine files, and essentially even CSV files. Any type of text document that any CSV file that you've got that will have XYZ coordinates and attributes can be imported in here. Also, if you want to say to drape an image over your digital terrain models, you can do that on the data tab. You can edit the attributes. We'll actually look at that in the third webinar, where we'll be configuring a stockpile. That's actually quite useful, especially when you're adding the stockpile names to each individual stockpile, as well as a number of other things that we actually don't have the time for. Then you've got the surfaces tab that will make it easy for you to create, manipulate DTMs, condition strings by changing the number of points that each individual string contains, creating a solids and all those nice things. You can also verify the solids that you've created on the surfaces tab, as well as add and subtract wireframes using the Boolean functions, as well as cleaning any DTMs that you've created. You can remove a nominal value. Say you've got a DTM that has small values that are throwing your data sets off. You can use that to clean your information. Then under the edit, you have a lot more expansive editing tools. Now, these will basically build up on the editing tools that you saw on the home tab with Haja's version doesn't have the new AutoNode, AutoSnap tools, which you will have when you get Studio Survey for yourself. So there's a couple of number of tools that have been added, which makes digitizing incredibly simple, snapping to points almost automatic, but obviously you need to direct where you want to snap. And then we've got the reporting tab, which we've spent this afternoon looking at, as well as the format tab, which will give you filtering options, which will give you the methods of looking at data sets that you want, data sets that you don't want to see but want to keep, as well as just basic preparation. And then under the system tab, you have the ability to create macros, scripts, as well as customizing your Studio Survey user interface to suit your own personal preferences. In the current version, you have the ability to customize the tabs and arrange them however you see fit. Now, the only reason that you don't see that on Haja's interface right now is because that update came in 2 days ago. So this is a program that is being improved, especially with more feedback. So we actually help you to improve your workflow with everything that you do. Sometimes you will have a specific function that you need, and we can work that into the software. So I'd like to thank every one of you for coming. Attending this webinar. I'm so used to being on one-on-one contact with people. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Kalumba. Thank you, Haja.
Thank you all. For this second part, can we maybe send some questions to you through the email?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
All right, I will text you later. Since I have your email, because it's almost 3 o'clock now.
Okay, no problem. Hey, Reina.
All right, thank you.
How are you? My question was not answered, but then I'll send you a mail on that. I sent a question, but it was not answered, but I'll send you a mail on that.
Okay, so just send me the mail and we'll include it as part of the material for next week's session.
All right. That's fine.
We have Silvio.
Yes. I've said that I will also send you questions through your email.
All right, no problem. Thanks. And
Right,
just to
it was a
mention as
pleasure.
well, a recording of this webinar will be made available as long as you attended or registered. We will send you the video of this in case you missed something and wanted to go through it again.
All right, thanks.
Thank you so much,
Jones. Thank you, Jones. Thank you for attending.
Boy, that was very nice. Hope I will attend the next one.
Oh, thank you. That would be excellent.
Thank you so much.
Amel. Are these questions? We have a question from or a hand raised by
Any question from my side? Everything is good. Armel.
All right.
Yeah,
Excellent.
thanks. Yep.
Okay, cheers.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Wow.
Dodgy.
Back. Ah, it was Dodgy that had the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Dodgy, there's something on. I think it's a speaker in your background that's making it. Where is he? Godwin. There we are. Okay, Dodgy, can hear your question.
Yeah. I wanted to know the Excel report sheet. Are we going to have the column for the cat volume?
Okay, Dodgy, there's a lot of. I think you're using a speaker. There's a lot of painful feedback coming in. Maybe if you can reduce the volume and then run it again. Dodgy? Okay. Yeah, okay, much better.
Yes, I was asking about the Excel sheet in the reporting.
Yeah.
Are we going to have the columns created for the cut volumes and the fill volumes as we requested the last time?
Yes, that is being done as we speak. So in the next release, you will have the cut and fill volumes. The current one was taking care of the initial request to remove the natural topo. That is done. We're just testing that output for you, and you'll have that update forthwith.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Taji. The names are moving around. Okay. How do I? There we go. There's a question from Mr. Chibuye. How are you doing, sir? Well, now that we have no more questions, this brings us to the end of this webinar. Thank you very much for attending.